Hey, Daddy, this is the man of the champions, Bill Fonzie Alfonso, giving a shout out to something else. Something else, Daddy.
This is Nicole Matata, Great Warrior Wolf, and you are listening to Something Else.
I'm Tony Cini, and you're listening to Something Else.
Hey everybody, it's Rich Palladino, the voice of New England, and you are listening to Something Else with Aria.
And welcome to Something Else, episode number 133. In real life, or not in real life, but to the listening audience, 7 whole calendar days have passed since Cindy and I last sat here and talked about NWA TNA from 2002. In real life, about 3 minutes have passed. Cindy, do you feel any better now 3 minutes later than you did 3 minutes ago when we talked about October 9th, 2002?
I was working overtime today. What the hell are you talking about? It is Wednesday the 16th.
Yes. I wish I was sitting in East Greenwich, Rhode Island right now talking about annuities and, whatever other thing we have to talk about in training right now. But instead, I'm here with you and we're talking about TNA from October 16th, 2002. This is TNA episode number 17. And I'll be honest, I don't remember what episode Brian Alvarez and Vinny V and Craig and all them stopped doing the TNA reviews, but I have a feeling it was this one because this was the show where I was ready to call you and say, can we just pretend that we never actually reviewed this show and just do something else?
I think I told you, can we watch the Best Damn specials again?
Just watch those 2 shows over and over again every week for 2 years?
Yeah, why not?
Oh, God. So this week in Jerry Jarrett's book, we have new owners officially of TNA. Panda Energy has signed the documents, and they are officially the owners of the company as of October 15th. Now we get to the weird part, because it's fucking Jerry Jarrett and nothing he does makes sense. He has an issue because Panda Energy wants to take $750 of Jeff's office salary and apply it to the wrestling talent budget. Jerry is pissed off because that reduces the amount of money you can pay for the other wrestlers. Really? You can't just add $750 to the talent budget since you're now subtracting $750 from the office budget and still pay the exact same amount of fucking money? Are you going to go give one of the office staff a $750 raise now because, hey, they have an extra $750 in the budget now? No, you're not. You're paying the exact same amount of fucking money you did yesterday. Shut up, old man. At this point, it's like, and like at this point, it's like I'm happy that Vince Russo wins the power struggle with him because this is another show he fucking booked the entire goddamn thing, or if he didn't give anybody else credit for it. Like you would think after this show, because he says in the book that he didn't think the show came off as well as he thought it would, that if it didn't, he would be the first to throw someone else under the bus to get blamed for coming up with this show.
I guess he couldn't find anybody to throw under the bus.
He needs to be taken out of the Observer Hall of Fame just for this show.
Yeah.
In fact, I got my ballot a few weeks ago. Let me go see. Let me just double check that he's in the Observer Hall of Fame already. Because if not, I'm sure he'd be listed as somebody on the ballot. Let's see. Yes, apparently when you harass Dave Meltzer enough, he sends you a Hall of Fame ballot. In case you're curious how you get one. Yeah, so Jerry Jarrett is not on the ballot, so that would insinuate that he is in the Hall of Fame. I want a recall election to take Jerry Jarrett out. So on to the show. We start the show, and
I'm
this
looking it up right now. I'm looking it up to see if Jerry Jarrett is actually in the Hall of Fame. Let me click F3 on this thing. I actually click F2, F3, JRETT. He was inducted in 2018.
he was voted in, which means I may have voted for him because I've had a ballot since 2014. That kills me that I may have voted for him.
He
God
got
damn
in
it.
before. Here's the list of people who got inducted and who are worthy inductees before Jerry Jarrett. Are you ready? This is after 2018. Jim Crockett Sr., Kenny Omega, Dan Karloff, Jim Crockett Jr., Don Owen, the Vianos, Sergeant Slaughter, Jack and Jerry Briscoe, and Antonino Rocca and Miguel Perez. All of those wrestlers, bookers, promoters, what have you, were inducted after Jerry Jarrett. And to be perfectly honest, I have seen USWA when he was promoting it. I have seen Continental when he was promoting it. He does not belong in the Hall of Fame.
He's in because he managed to be the last promoter standing because he convinced the TV network to actually pay him and whatchamacallit, he paid the rest of the shit.
I'm always reminded of this story. Cornette told this story. It was 93. And he was like, okay, we might be working with WWF. So there's gonna be drug testing, so you guys are gonna have to cycle off and get off that. And then one of the wrestlers was like, you pay us so little, we're barely on food.
Yeah, Dutch Mantel said that.
And Dutch Mantel will know. Because wasn't he paid garbage when he worked Kansas?
I believe it.
So I have written down my notes. Can it get worse than it did last week? Let's find out.
Someone has a sign that's supposed to be WWE, but it's Wish We Were Entertaining, which is WWWE. And the show only goes downhill from here. The highlight of the show is how we spend 6 minutes recapping last week's show. A full 6 minutes on this nearly 2 hour show were spent recapping last week's show. Goldilocks then interviews Jorge Estrada. Jorge announces he has a new valet named Priscilla and that he's looking for a new flying Elvis, and specifically says he does not want someone who can wrestle, but he does want someone who can dance. Again, Vince Russo did not write this show.
There is so much to unpack in this promo.
Like how Priscilla looks nothing like Priscilla Presley.
There's more to it than this.
Well, while this interview is going on, behind them is a door. And out this door comes Six Pac, who sees the camera, who sees Jorge and Goldie, and sneaks off. Brian Lawler runs into picture and demands to know where his girlfriend April is. After Lawler leaves, Goldie wraps up the interview, and behind them, the door opens again. April looks out, sees the camera, and closes the door again without anybody catching her. So,
Yeah.
what do you think Six Pack and April were doing behind that closed door?
Playing cribbage.
That makes as much sense as anything because seconds later, Brian Lawler comes out for his match with David Young, and he drags April out there with him, despite the fact that April is insinuated to just have sex with Six Pack. She doesn't have a hair out of place. She looks well put together. Her makeup's not smeared. She looks like somebody who did not just have sex.
She looks like she just arrived in the building,
Yes.
or at least
So if you
that's
told
the
me,
insinuation.
yes, if you told me that Six Pack and April, you know, were playing cribbage in that room, I would believe you.
Yeah. I want to talk about that segment a little bit because Goldilocks, they come right out with the Elvis puns. But they do say that Jimmy is still in All Japan. Just a note that he only makes a couple more appearances for TNA before he joins WWE as a Keo. Secondly, about Priscilla, think back to episode 2 in the lingerie battle royal to crown the first Miss TNA.
She was one of those bimbos, wasn't she?
Miss Joni.
She was not Alexis Luray,
No,
not Daphne or Francine or
nope,
Jasmine St. Clair.
nope.
Well, she probably worked cheaper than all those people.
$200.
I imagine she got paid $25.
Works. Um, so by the way, Brian, going back to Lawler, he said he will hold Goldie responsible if she's been messing around. This would never come into play whatsoever.
Because how is it Goldilocks' fault if Brian Lawler's girlfriend wants to be with somebody else?
Right. And I have a theory after this match.
That it's a demon, a dancing demon. Now something isn't right.
Yeah. By the way,
Um,
David Young versus Brian Lawler. Didn't we have this match already?
probably.
Like, you couldn't pay another local guy $50 to job to Brian Lawler.
I mean, of all the local guys you could be paying $50 to do a job for, David Young is probably one of the better ones at this point.
They were
Um,
probably paying him $100, especially
um,
after his Japan tour.
so according to Cage Match, this is the only time Brian Lawler and David Young wrestle ever. So it just seems like it's, two people who've already wrestled a few
Yeah.
times. So Brian Lawler, who the last we checked was a near top heel in the company, had a comedy match here in the opener. Um, David Young clotheslines him to the outside. Brian stands up, he looks around, and then falls face first into April's crotch. And then he goes to get back in the ring and he trips over the top rope. So now our main event heel is a comedy geek.
Well, out of the group of 4, you would think this would
Lawler
belong to Elix Skipper. Nope. It's Lawler.
Lawler uses the skull crushing finale but doesn't make a cover. Instead, he yells at the crowd. Eventually, David Young climbs the middle rope for some reason. April waves at him, which distracts him. So Lawler gives him a scorpion death drop off the middle rope for the pin. I wrote this match wasn't necessarily bad, but it wasn't good either. And it got a 2.5 out of 10 for me.
Gave it a 3. It was like meh. It was there. Um, Post match, he drags April to the ring and just slams her down. Is like, yeah, she's mine. Okay, this is where I see the Six stuff, and I'm like, now I know why April is with Six. Or has been sleeping around with Six. My theory is that she is probably being treated better with Six than with Lawler.
Which says something because, 2002 Sean Waltman wasn't considered very much of a gentleman.
No, but we'll get to something like that because apparently one of the things we'll hear about is how Sean is trying to reform himself in TNA. But it, like, all we've ever seen of Lawler and April is Lawler being an abusive piece of shit to her. So it's along the lines of, I gotta get away from this person. I gotta get away from this asshole. How do I really tweak him?
And why doesn't she just dump him?
Because
No, really.
he's an abusive piece of shit.
Exactly. Why doesn't she dump him?
Because I've seen this time and time again. Now I'm getting real life here because I've seen this before. When it comes to domestic violence or stuff like that, it's all about control. Like, the person who is the victim, in this case, April, the thing is, like, they're powerless. Like, if they try to tell someone that they're being abused, some people are like, oh, maybe you just need to listen to him. Or, like, around this time, it's like, oh, maybe you should just listen to him. Or God will help both of you with counseling. And you got to put your faith in, you got to put the family first if you have a child or anything like that. When the truth is, they are so paralyzed with fear that the violence would escalate and they could wind up in the hospital or worse. So they just stick with them because they could and probably will experience worse.
That is far deeper than I imagine this storyline will go.
It is, but I think it's my real life experiences. Because where I live, I moved into this apartment complex originally in 1995. This apartment complex that I live in used to be a domestic violence battered women's shelter. And so in the middle room, it used to be the recreational room. There would be meetings there. And I was privy to what happened and heard a bunch of stories about abuse. And this was back when I was 8 or 9 years old. So I know all about the fear. And I know all about people lashing out. Originally, when this was built, the bathroom was essentially a panic room. Because the doors are, like, the normal doors in the house, except for the front door and the bathroom door, are pretty much wood. They're pretty much your hollow wooden doors. Basic hollow wooden doors. The front door and the bathroom door are solid metal. And in the bathroom originally, there was a button that you press. It would immediately be a page to the police. Shit's going down. This is the stuff that I grew up with. And seeing this storyline, it made me sympathetic to April and Six, believe it or not. It's
I am really
also
sorry you had to go through that.
it's also the domestic violence stuff in wrestling is my least favorite storyline.
And unfortunately, especially around this time, it's something that is a not a constant, but something that gets redone frequently.
Yeah. Um this was I'm trying to remember the most recent one storyline wise when it comes to relationships, and I think it was TNA in 2015, where I think it was when James Storm pretty much killed or quote unquote killed Mickey James.
Well, yes, but they weren't in a relationship. They were friends, and James Storm was feuding with Nick Aldis,
Right,
who's Mickey James' husband.
right. So this would be more along the lines. So further back in the major companies, probably Chuck Palumbo with
Michelle
Michelle
McRibs.
McCool.
Uh, it's funny because it is something that hasn't happened in a while, thankfully. Like the one I thought of was Test and Stacy Keibler.
Right, 2003.
Yeah. So thankfully, sometimes wrestling back in the day is better for different things, but we'll call this one of the reasons why wrestling nowadays is better. Like you would not see a storyline like this nowadays, mostly because women are booked so much stronger. Like, is there anybody right now, WWE, TNA, AEW, that if they booked a storyline where they were in a relationship and their significant other was being an abusive asshole, that you wouldn't fully expect a woman to stand up and kick their ass?
Right. Plus, the storyline wouldn't even be done anyways, because take a look at the three major companies right now. Um, who is the most powerful woman in each of those divisions?
Rhea Ripley,
Yep.
I don't, Jordan Grace, and I don't even know who would be the AEW equivalent.
I would say Statlander.
Sure. But yeah. So to change the subject to a weird degree here, up next we go to the Holocaust footage, this time of the Jerry Lynn Sonny Siaki feud. After that, Jerry Lynn begins limping to the ring, and he says he's going to give Sonny Siaki the benefit of the doubt. Sure, Sonny didn't mean to throw him off of the stage and hurt his knee. Lynn then called him a punk ass bitch who Siaki will fight next week. And I'm like, is this guy bipolar? Is this guy got mood swings or what here? Lynn then says Siaki is exactly what's wrong with this business, which would make more sense if he didn't just say the same thing about AJ Styles 2 months ago. This brought our good friend Sonny Siaki to the ring, or I'm sorry, to the ramp, and he says that he will not be a mid-carder for the next 15 years. And to be fair, he's true. He is not a mid-carder for the next 15 years. He spends 3 years in the mid-card in TNA before spending about a year or two in WWE developmental mid-card. And that is a whole lot less than 15 years of mid-cardism. So he was
Yeah, but
right.
there's a reason. Yeah, but he going back. The reason why he left was quite noble. He left
That would
professional
be
wrestling after 2008.
okay.
His brother needed a kidney, otherwise he would die.
That's
Straight
a
up.
pretty good reason.
So Sonny, of course, was a blood match. So Sonny Siaki donated his kidney. Brother's still alive. He's still alive. But
I, I wonder
he
if his
stopped
brother.
wrestling.
I wonder if his brother now talks about himself in the third person all the time.
He's a private citizen. He's never been in a wrestling ring or anything like that. So let him pass.
Well, eventually we have the pull apart brawl. Norman Smiley and several other mid-card geeks and TNA security run in to break it up. Finally, after fighting off all of the security, the brawl was stopped by Bullet Bob Armstrong because why not? The Armstrong should be the top badass baby faces in every promotion, I think.
Also, Ninja Roll Don Harris.
Yeah, Stone Cold Don Harris was out there as well.
And he and Sonny got into a big shoving match, building off of last week.
Yes, because what the world needs more than anything else is Sonny Siaki and Stone Cold Don Harris. I know how much you've been waiting for that match.
Yeah. Honestly, that match would probably improve the show. Because at
Honestly, at
least it'd
this
be a
point,
match I would care about.
I don't know if I'd care about it, but at this point, I can't even disagree that it wouldn't at least be slightly better than some of the shit we've seen on this show so far.
Yeah. Also,
Um,
remember how I said that Six was trying to rebuild his reputation or reputation.
I
I'll,
do.
I'll I'll learn how to speak English soon. We have
To
a
re
pre-show interview between Mike Tenay and Six Pac. Um,
to read makes you speak English good.
Thank you, but don't take my
So
word for it. Da-da-da. Uh, Interview with Mike and Six Pac essentially was bringing about the global stuff with Sean as the Lightning Kid against Jerry Lynn. And he was kind of taken aback for that. He said that he's a professional wrestler and that's why he's here. He wants to rebuild his reputation that way. About AJ, who he's wrestling tonight, which they didn't say was a ladder match, so apparently that stipulation was wrong straight away. He was disrespectful, low key, and admitted he was wrong. That's why he was backstage. AJ says he's trying to get his respect, and tonight he'll get his chance to win it. He isn't proud of the way he won the title, and tonight he'll prove he belongs to be champion. It was a fine little interview. It was a little clunky, I would say. But
I
it
love
was
that he
fine.
said that he's not proud of the way he won the title. Then why did you choose to win the title that way?
Because he probably didn't
Like,
want Styles to win it after he was being a dick.
well, then he should say that. I did say it was not a bad promo at all. And so now we're 31 minutes into the show and have had only 6 minutes of wrestling in the entire show. And I think that was the last interview segment on the entire show. Actually, no, I'm sorry. They have Kurt Hennig later. It is next to the last interview segment on the show. So then we have Sonny Siaki versus Jorge Estrada with Priscilla. So they drag Sonny Siaki backstage just long enough for him to walk right back out for his match. They couldn't have just done the Lynn angle later or even after this match. And this is when I note that Priscilla is a random blonde woman who looks nothing like Priscilla Presley. Um, Jorge Estrada during this match used moves by Mr. Kennedy, Chris Jericho, and Matt Hardy when he does a rolling fireman's carry, a lion salt, and a side effect. Now, before somebody slides into my DMs and complains, yes, I know that Mr. Kennedy isn't in WWE for like 3 more years at this point. Get over it. I'm gonna make the reference anyway. But this match was fine. It
Yeah.
sadly is one of the best matches on the show, which is just, yeah.
Sad.
What was that?
Sad.
Yes.
Especially
Siaki
the
wins with,
finish was wonky.
yep. Siaki wins with the roll of the dice that he now calls the Siakalypse.
He used to
At
call it the
one
money
point,
clip.
yeah. At one point, Siaki's outside the ring. Estrada goes for a dive off the top rope, but Siaki pulls Priscilla into the way, so Estrada changes directions and crashes into the barricade, which I think would qualify as the clunkiness you were talking about earlier.
Yep.
And I gave the match a 3.0 out of 10.
I gave it a 5, but in retrospect, it probably was more like a 4.
So after the
By the
match,
way, post-match, Sherilyn Russian beats on Sonny Siaki again.
yes, and then the exact same people pull them apart again, including Don Harris once again yanking Sonny Siaki away. Are we sure they didn't just air the prior pull apart and add a new voiceover?
Why not?
We then get a match. Derek's Wild versus Ace Steel with Mortimer Plumtree. Derek Wild, in case you forget, is one of the people who, were in the tag team gauntlet, even though we've never seen them before in our lives. And this was his next appearance after that. And also, Derek and Ace were two of the geeks pulling apart Jerry Lynn and Sonny Siaki a second ago. Why did they do that? There are 100 guys in black shirts out there. They couldn't have told the two guys in the next match not to bother. For the for the first few minutes, this match wasn't awful. And then I think Derek went for a Hurricanrana. However, he didn't get up high enough, or Ace was too close, because Derek instead hooks him by the armpits and drags him out of the ring. Then on the floor, they do a mistimed spot where Ace backdrops Derek onto the apron, and Derek is supposed to do a handstand into a Hurricanrana, but Derek does the move, and then about 30 seconds later, Ace goes over and takes the bump. In the ring, Ace misses a punch by 5 feet. Derek still sells it. Ace then attempts to pick up Derek in what begins as a gory special that he would then turn into a neck breaker that's called the Twist of Cain. However, this part was definitely Derek's fault. He could not get up and get into the proper position for the move. And this match fell apart badly here.
Yeah,
Please
I said it
stop.
wasn't crisp or dominant like it should be.
I'm like, please don't let these people wrestle on TV again, is what I wrote. 1.0 out of 10.
Gave it a 2.
And here,
Mainly because Ace was decent. Derek Wild, I became nothing in the world of professional wrestling. His partner Jimmy Rave did a lot more. By the way, where the hell is Jimmy Rave?
he wants more than $50, I imagine.
I guess.
So
I guess he's getting that from Feinstein in Ring of Honor. He's probably getting paid like $100 or something.
I'd like to point out that was not the worst match of the show.
No, there's worse.
And speaking of worse, that is next. Jeff Jarrett is in the worst match on a show that included Ace Steel versus Derek Wild, you know, Ron Harris versus Norman Smiley, and the fucking main event, which we'll get to. And Jeff Jarrett is in a match worse than all those matches. It is Jeff Jarrett and Miss TNA Bruce versus BG James and Hermie Sadler in a match set up last week. Miss TNA now in a match with men, which is quite a step up to go from wrestling women to being in a match with two top guys, which I wrote is something he probably enjoys. Little did I know what was to come.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time Bruce has wrestled men since July 3rd, when he teamed with Lenny Lane to lose to AJ Styles and Jerry Lynn in the tag team title tournament. BG takes the mic and insinuates that Jarrett is gay because he's teaming with Bruce and that Squirmy Hermie will run over the homo.
You're forgetting the one at the beginning.
Forget, didn't write down, choose to forget. What did I miss?
Uh, Essentially calling Bruce a trans slur.
Great, great. TNA
Uh,
presents Hate Crimes
I
every
have
Wednesday
it.
for $9.99.
I have it written here. He says that he and Herbie will prove that he could race and wrestle. He says another slur, and I'm getting sick of this. I just want Bruce gone. Not only because he sucks, so all of the slurs and crap go away.
Well, Jarrett then congratulates Hermie for finishing last in the NASCAR race. Yes, the NWA TNA car finished last in a race.
This was the Little Trees 300.
Well, Jarrett and BG start this match, and no one gives a fuck. Bruce tags in, and this is where it goes downhill, in case the whole idea of the match wasn't downhill enough. Bruce tags in and gets into position for BG to have anal sex with him.
Ugh.
That's what I wrote. BG then held his legs for the kick in the nuts / kick in the abdomen spot, but he instead, for some reason, he keeps staring at Bruce's crotch. Were we supposed to believe Bruce was getting an erection?
Yes. And
Good.
also of note, I have the results of the Little Trees 300, the race where Hermie Sadler launched the NWA TNA car.
Great, great. Who defeated Hermie Sadler? What great Hall of Fame racer defeated Hermie Sadler in the Little Trees 300, the 2002 Little Trees 300?
Jeff Burton.
I will assume that's a good driver.
Yes, by the way, the person who finished second is a really great driver by the name of Michael Waltrip.
And how many people were in this race?
43.
And Hermie finished 43rd.
No. He finished 29th.
Then why the hell did they say he finished last?
Because I don't know.
Okay, great.
Because
Jeff
Scott
Jarrett-
Wimmer finished dead last because he blew his engine in the first lap.
So
he
Jeff
blew his engine in lap 20.
So Jeff Jarrett, the secret owner of the company who pays to sponsor the NASCAR car, bragged that the guy who drives the car that they sponsor finished last when he didn't really finish last.
I have no idea why.
Welcome to TNA, ladies and gentlemen.
Yep.
Welcome to TNA. And then BG goes for the pump handle slam. Now BG was the road dog from like 97 to 2000. And what he would do, and I'm sure like if you've ever watched Road Dogg wrestle, you've seen him do this. He sets you up for the pump handle slam. He steps behind you and simulates having anal sex with you, and then he gives you the pump handle slam. Bruce enjoyed it. And because Bruce enjoyed it, BG James got creeped out and threw Bruce away. So just to reiterate, it is okay for BG to simulate anal sex with his opponent as long as they don't enjoy it. But it is creepy and sick if he simulates anal sex with somebody and they like it.
I think the gimmick is supposed to be everybody's just creeped out by Bruce. And that was the moment where this episode I just checked out.
But it's like and I know, like, what the hell am I even bothering arguing with this for? But if you're going to fucking, like, if your gimmick is you don't want to wrestle the gay guy, but you're forced to, don't give him the simulated anal sex. Because then it's on you. Like, it's not his fault for enjoying it. It's your fault for doing it and then being weirded out that somebody would enjoy it. So eventually, Jarrett and BG have enough of this match and fight up to the ramp. Brian Lawler appears and hits BG with a trash can. Stone Cold Don Harris comes out for the 14th time on this show, grabs Lawler on a rear choke, and drags him off. In the ring, Hermie does something that resembles reversing a sunset flip for the pin.
Yeah, it would have been a lot better if Bruce actually got his legs up, and he should know. Fuck.
After the match, Jeff Jarrett returns and argues with Miss TNA, pointing his finger at him. Bruce puts the tiara on and wants Jarrett to hug him, so Jarrett kicks him in the balls and drops him with the stroke. This entire show so far needs to be shown to war criminals to torture them to giving up secrets.
I have more written down about this match.
Oh, please, go ahead.
I said that it never got going, like, at all. Sadler was clunky, but that could be the only time when he was in the ring. He was only in the ring when Bruce was in the ring, when he actually did stuff. It was with Bruce. And let's not mince words. Bruce sucks as a wrestler. He sucks.
Thankfully, you added the as a wrestler part, because we cannot prove what he does in his personal life.
Well, that's because somebody in the audience had the sign. It says, Hermie blows motors. Bruce, you get the rest.
I've tried to ignore the whatchamacallit, the audience entirely. I fail usually, but I try to ignore it.
That one I couldn't ignore because it was in the audience the entire show. I was like, God fucking damn it. The match hid a lot of Sadler's weaknesses because that was more of a brawl. That was, weapons could have been used in that match.
And that match went like 2 minutes.
It went like 4. It went like 4, but that's because Truth is a good worker. I think we mentioned this last week. Truth, even though we know him now as sort of a joke, is a good wrestler. Plain and simple, He's a good wrestler. He knows what he was doing. He was trained well. And he is somebody you could put in with someone who is a rank amateur like Hermie Sadler, who was trained to do a few things, and it would be okay.
He can do
Bruce,
the celebrity match.
right? He could do. There are wrestlers out there that could do the celebrity match and do it well. Like Jarrett, if he would wrestle Sadler, and Jarrett has done celebrity matches before. Remember, he did the stuff with David Arquette before David had his career renaissance in the late 2010s.
I'm sorry, career renaissance. That got me.
Like he did a lot of independent stuff in the mid to late
Yeah,
2010s.
yes, I know. He got murdered by what's his name?
Nick Gage.
Um, yes.
Uh, Bruce was trained by the power plant, and that the power plant is notorious for not teaching anybody shit.
They were in excellent shape, however.
Yep, but couldn't do shit in the ring. And the one guy that they lucked into was Goldberg.
I
Now
mean,
I know what people are.
they kind of lucked into Sean O'Hare because he had a chance to be something, but that WWE run, was nothing.
And let's not mention his MMA career.
No, no. By the way, I looked up and David Arquette both wrestles and teams with RJ City quite often.
Even on Family
And
Feud.
and even like David Arquette's last match, and I there's a very perverse side of me that wants to see what the hell this is, but this is from something called WPW As Soon as Possible, July 31st, 2021. David Arquette wrestles as somebody called Rob Boss, and he teams with a little angry tree to defeat Whopper Texas Ranger.
Eh,
Your silence says more than any comments could ever be. He
yeah.
also has matches with Ethan Page, Peter Avalon, Jungle Boy, Mr. Anderson, Timothy Thatcher, Colt Cabana, which I could totally see, and of course the 18-minute match where Nick Gage murders him to death.
Yeah, apparently during a light tube spot, it actually got his carotid artery. So immediately when that happened, they just went home.
Again, David Arquette had a match that includes the phrase during the light tube spot.
Yep.
I just feel that needs to be reiterated.
By the way, I think both of us could agree on what we gave that Hermie Sadler match. We'll say it on the
I
count
gave
of
it.
three, okay?
I think I probably gave a higher rating than you, but go ahead.
1, 2, 3. 1 out of 10.
Oh no, I gave a lower rating, 0.5,
Way to go,
because
guys.
Jeff Jarrett. I figured Jeff Jarrett and BG James worked just hard enough to keep this out of a complete zero.
Right.
And by being a 0.5, that makes it one of Bruce's best matches on this program.
Yet, I think he's still got more stinkers in him.
Oh yes, we have at least another month of Bruce.
Yeah.
There there's more Bruce to come,
Yep.
and there is still an entire fucking hour left of this show, is what I wrote here.
Yep. Let's wash the
And
taste out of our mouth with Norman Smiley versus Rod Harris.
Norman Smiley versus Ron Harris. So the story that Ron can never find a partner to team with, I guess it's continued because he could not find a partner to team with, and he's now a single wrestling Norman Smiley. And this is a rematch. We talked about Thunder last week. There was an episode of Thunder in January 2001, and I think I played the promo on this show before, but Ron and Don Harris cut a backstage promo where Don was in a neck brace and said that he'd been injured, and so he has to retire because if he takes one more bump, his head could fall off his shoulders. And Scott Hudson agreed that yes, this man's head spontaneously falling off his shoulders would be sad. And then Ron took on Norman Smiley and won when Don took off the neck brace and helped Ron win. And his head did not fall off. You might notice in the 15 times he shows up on every show, Don still has his head.
Yeah. Or
So
his head didn't fall off when he had that awful match with Malice. Which one, you ask? Yes.
So the last time we saw Norman Smiley was about 20 minutes ago when he broke up Lynn and Siaki. The last time before that was 7 minutes earlier when he broke up Lynn and Siaki. But the last time before that was July 17th when Ron Killings hung him over the top rope. Apparently he's decided that bygones be bygones here.
They mentioned that during the match.
Norman with a drop kick to the thigh and goes for the big wiggle, but Ron punches him in the mouth and hits the big boot. Later, Norman does give the big wiggle, and Ron was not happy with the simulated anal sex, so he eventually won with a full Nelson slam. Why is simulated anal sex such an important part of two different wrestlers' repertoire?
To be honest, let's be honest. Smiley, it was like the smack my bitch up sort of maneuver. You know, there's a song called Smack My Bitch Up, and it was talked about during that song, and it had probably the most interesting music video of all time. It was all first person and everything.
And that sounds much more interesting than this show.
Yeah, it is. It was part of an MTV countdown. It was the 10 most censored music videos. And it was the most censored music video because in the edited version, and this song was released in 96. In the edited version, some of the drug and alcohol use was censored. And in the end of the video scene, it was a guy in the video after having sex with a girl. In the original video, it was a girl having sex with a girl.
Well, that would be controversial.
Even in 96, yes.
Yes. So
like,
after
we're talking about a lot. I know we're talking about a lot of stuff besides the show, but if you've seen the show, you understand when we're talking about stuff besides the show.
So after the match, Ron attacks Norman, so Norman beat the fucking shit out of him. So Don Harris runs in for the save. Ron was not happy with this, so the twins squared off nose to nose to set up a match that no one on the planet Earth wants to fucking see. And then this was supposed to lead to a rematch next week, but when Jerry Jarrett reviewed the tapes, he didn't like what he saw and wrote it off. So there will not be a rematch next week. Cindy, what part of this match made you think that there should be a rematch next week?
None.
This match was 3 times as good as the Jeff Jarrett match. 1.5 out of 10.
I had it as a basic late era WCW Saturday night style match, which means there's a cap to what I give it automatically. And it didn't even make the cap.
I was about
give
to
it a
ask,
2.
did it meet the cap?
No.
Ah.
The
And
cap I would have for a basic late era WCW Saturday night style match would be a 5. It got to a 2.
NWA World Tag Team Champions Chris Harris and James Storm versus Chris and Rick Michaels. So we're on week 17 of the AMW alert. And no, Harris and Storm are still Harris and Storm. However, there is a sign in the crowd calling them America's Most Wanted. So maybe that's an origin story.
Who knows?
I don't know. Now, I get that I'm a very nitpicky person, Cindy. So we'll see what you think about this. They keep saying that Harris and Storm are the only undefeated wrestlers in TNA, and Don says that they're the only undefeated wrestlers who've had more than 3 matches. Cindy, do you know why that's bullshit?
Let's see here. More than 3 matches. Oh, didn't they lose a match prior?
Yes, they both lost on the first episode of TNA. Chris Harris was in the gauntlet match and lost. James Storm teamed with Psychosis and lost to the Johnsons. While, yes, they are undefeated as a tag team, they have lost in TNA before. So they need to put an asterisk on that and say that they're undefeated as a team, which is true, but that's not what they kept saying. They kept saying they're undefeated in TNA.
Let's be perfectly honest. Would you want to recognize the first TNA show ever? Aside
It
from
is
the Toby Keith thing?
like literally, you go back and listen to our first TNA show. That show and this show are 2 entirely different companies. I mean, other than the fact that they're now owned by 2 entirely different people, the fact is, like, that show, they were like, I don't say big budget, but they were spending a lot more money on that show than they are on this show. And it was, decent looking production and all that. And then it took them way too long to realize that they cannot afford to do that. So here they are at the National Fairgrounds, which they've managed to make it look decent right now, but it's no, 9,000 seat building in Huntsville.
It's not even an impact zone yet.
Yeah. So for what it's worth, Chris and Rick Michaels, who again are not related, are better than Ace Steel and Derek Wild. But I wrote, I don't want them to win either. And spoiler alert, they don't. The announcers at no point during this match tell us which Michaels is which. I thought one of them had the letter R on his tights, but it turns out it was just a wacky cross. So one of them did a top rope leg drop to Storm, and the other one did a top rope elbow to Harris, but both times the champs kicked out. And finally, Harris and Storm won when Harris pinned one of them with a catatonic. If that's where it ended, I'd be like, okay, it was fine. Nothing wrong with this. Michaels and Michaels won a match last week to get a tag team title match, and they lost this week in a match that I actually gave a 4 to. So by itself, it was literally the highest rated match of the show so far. However, oh, and by the way, Michaels and Michaels, they beat Ron Harris and Sonny Siaki last week. So they're baby faces. Maybe not in the strictest sense of the word, but they're baby faces. After the match, America's Most Wanted was attacked and beaten down by the Hot Shots, who apparently have to return to this company every six weeks. Like I imagine if I turned on Access TV Thursday, the hot shots would randomly show up. That's just how life is. And then for
I guess
some reason,
they needed to make a rent payment or something.
yeah, for some reason, Michaels and Michaels then join in on the beating, making it 4-on-2, which apparently is the Michaels' heel turn. 6 matches so far, and 4 of them have featured post-match attacks and beatdowns. Security took forever, but they finally ran in, only to be beaten down. Scott Armstrong ran in and eventually pointed at his shirt, which was the cue for everyone to leave. Why didn't he point at his shirt earlier? I don't know.
Because this beatdown needed to go on for far, 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 far too fucking long.
The post-match beatdown may be the third longest match of the show.
Yeah, I realized that. Back to the match itself. I actually enjoyed the match on its own. Like in a vacuum, it was a good match. There was some good back and forth. Yeah, Chris and Rick Michaels were babyface originally, but they leaned heel during this match. And I thought it was good. It was far and away the best match on this show. Bar none.
Including the next match?
Yes.
Oh. Well,
Because I also take one of the things that I heavily dislike is finishes that go against character.
well, before we get into that,
I gave the tag match
rating?
a 7 out of 10.
Wow. You like that almost twice as much as I did.
Yep.
So then we get the X Division Championship match, 6-Pac versus AJ Styles, who comes out with Mortimer Plumtree, because apparently Mortimer Plumtree now has added a second X Division wrestler. And yeah. So in the last 4 seconds of last week's show, this was announced as being a ladder match. Thankfully, that was forgotten about. In fact, Jerry Jarrett didn't even mention it in the book at all. So it's like he was just like we were pretending that never happened. And I was happy for it. So the first 2 matches were the first 2 minutes of the match were mostly shenanigans. AJ refused to shake Pac's hand, so Pac gave him a crotch chop. That's when Styles went for a test of strength. Pac gave him a crotch chop.
Mm-hmm.
Both men reversed each other's moves. Finally, AJ slapped Pac, and the shit was on. Mortimer, I thought, was a fine heel manager on the outside, choking Pac on the middle rope while AJ distracts the referee. I'm not sure how long this alliance lasts. I don't think it lasts very long, but I think Mortimer may actually be good for AJ because the fans just want to cheer AJ for doing cool shit, and Mortimer can at least get people to dislike him and then by association dislike AJ.
Absolutely. That's why the pairing makes sense. It also makes sense that AJ would also like everybody thought AJ was so self-centered that he wouldn't accept anybody's money to join forces. And Don West said as much when he was when Mortimer Plumtree did come out and AJ came out. So getting Mortimer to be with AJ would actually have that benefit. In the short term during this match, did that happen? Not really, but in future shows, you would start to see that benefit happen where AJ would get booed with or without Mortimer.
At one point, 6-Pac does a flip dive off the top rope to the floor, which I am pretty sure he has not done that move in years.
Not since the glory days of Global.
So back in the ring, AJ bumps the referee with a discus clothesline. Pac hits an X Factor, but there's no referee. Mortimer still runs in to break it up. Pac backs him into the corner. The referee wakes up and breaks that up. Mortimer rolls outside. Pac hits the Bronco Buster. The referee tries to pull him off, and Pac shoves him away for the disqualification. What the fucking fuck?
This is why I hate this match more. Why I didn't think this match was better than the tag title match. Because all we've heard during the show, especially during the promo and during the match earlier in the match, it was more about, rehabbing his reputation. Stuff like this flies in the face against it. So, seeing that made me think two things. One, why are you ruining character development on the same show? Two, of all the people that didn't need a DQ finish, of all the matches that didn't need a DQ finish from the babyface in this match, it's this one.
I wrote the match was really good until the end. I still gave it an 8.0 out of 10.
I gave it a 5. The finish killed it.
Before the main event, Don West grabs the mic to give the hard sell for next week. Sonny Siaki versus Jerry Lynn. BG James versus Brian Lawler. Harris and Storm will defend their titles again, and everybody will be on the show. After that, we go to Mike Tenay interviewing Curt Hennig before the show began. Hennig talked about all the titles he's won, and he says he wants wrestling to be how he remembers it and not how it is now. Anything else to add to that?
So he wants wrestling to be drug fueled and steroid fueled. Got it.
Yes. Over on the World Class show, saying we're doing a countdown is mean, but for all intents and purposes, we're counting down to the death of David Von Erich, who is going to die in February. Well, around the same time he dies on that show, Curt Hennig is going to die on this show. Because Hennig dies on February 10th.
Uh-oh.
But I'm pretty sure, because I don't think Curt Hennig, mind you, I say I don't think he's going to be here long. He's not going to be alive for much longer. I don't think he's going to be in TNA much longer. Let me see here.
I'm looking that up as well. Curt Hennig cage match.
His last match period is going to be on this show on January 8th.
So he's already out of the company.
Yes and no. I'm looking at that match and I remember watching it, and I cannot wait for us to talk about it. Him versus David Flair in an axe handle on a pole match. Yes. Silence is golden in this situation, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So then we get the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. The title has been around since 1905, or in reality, 1948. Either way, this title's been around a long fucking time. And this is what it's come to. Ron Killings versus Curt Hennig. But before the match starts, we need some more promo time. Ron takes the microphone and challenges TNA officials to grow a set of balls and not hide behind their office title. Killings is pissed because he said he's allowed to give minorities world title shots, but he's been champion 2 months, and he's only defended the title against one minority, who he doesn't mention, but it's Monty Brown. Ron then insulted everyone's mama and told Hennig to get his ass out here for the match. Kurt comes out with a mic asking if Truth ever heard of the word respect punk. I don't think that's a word. Anyway, Kurt then showed no respect punk to Truth by telling him to shut up. And the match was on. And I think the pre-match was better than the match, but that's not saying much. They go out over the guardrail for the main event brawl. Kurt hits Truth in the back with a chair a handful of times, which was not a disqualification. Back in the ring, referee Scott Armstrong warned Truth for using a thumb to the eye, by the way. So chair, no warning, thumb to the eye, warning. As the match picked up, several wrestlers appeared on the ramp and watched on. They've done this before, and the exact same thing happened then.
Yep.
Truth pulled out some sort of object out of his pants to take advantage on Hennig. That sounds so wrong, but it was actually a foreign object and not, his penis or something. Truth gets scooped up for a power slam, and Truth kicks Scott Armstrong in the head. Hennig goes for the Hennig Plex when he's attacked by Mr. Wrestling 3. 3 runs in and attacks both Hennig and Truth. 6 and BG James run in. 3 runs away, and all hell breaks loose with a shit ton of wrestlers in the ring. The bell never rings, so Bullet Bob, Bill Barons, and a plethora of security run in and tell everyone to leave and orders the match to continue. I'd like to point out again, 6 got disqualified for shoving the referee, but this match continues after about 20 people all run into the ring. Truth then hip tosses the referee and punches both Jeremy Borash and Bullet Bob. The match still continues. Bob takes the mic and tells him to get back in the ring or forfeit the belt. While the referee started counting him out, Jeff Jarrett runs down and gives Kurt Hennig an uppercut to the balls. Truth then rolls in and covers Hennig for the win. Whoever booked this show needs to never be allowed to book wrestling ever again. Lou Thez is rolling over in his grave after this match.
It's like they dug up Lou Thez, desecrated his corpse, buried him again, unburied him again, desecrated it some more, and then buried him again. 2 out of 10.
1.5 out of 10.
Good enough. The show sucked. It was worse than last one. How's that possible?
I told you last week what my score was for this week. So overall, match quality, average, somehow, despite having all those matches with a 1 and less, the average match quality was a 2.75, meaning it was less than 1.5 stars per match. Overall enjoyment, 2.0 out of 10. This week, there were nonstop shenanigans in almost every match, and they lumped all of the interviews and backstage stuff into the first 30 minutes instead of spreading it out over the show, which probably would have been better for the show itself. And then future build, the desire for me to watch this show again, a 1.0 out of 10. I never want to watch this show ever again, giving us an overall rating of 1.92.
I couldn't be asked to give this any ratings. This show is beyond reproach. As much as I like the tag title match, everything else, I would rather watch anything else.
They expected people to give them money for this show. And then this show was supposed to make people want to give them more money. Holy fuck. And
Let's
are we still gonna keep doing this shit, bro?
maybe just to make sure it gets better. Like,
Can't get
I
any
think
worse, can
I
it?
think next week's show was halfway decent. I've
I
skimmed
haven't
through it.
watched it yet. We still have 94 of these to go. And like in my head, I'm remembering like the X Cup. I remember like when they like had like the America's X Cup with the US versus Mexico and all that. That's the stuff that I remember that I'm looking forward to watching. The stuff that I forget that we had to watch first was this.
Yes, because let's face it, TNA starts to get very watchable in 2004.
Why do all these companies all have such shitty rosters at the beginning of the company? Like AEW like had a pretty lousy roster outside of the top five guys. Smoky Mountain had a pretty fucking lousy roster after the first two guys. TNA has perhaps the shittiest roster we've ever seen, but it's got a bunch of people who will eventually become really good. It's like at this point, it's like the company that figured it out at this point in this time period is fucking Ring of Honor, who like go watch a Ring of Honor show from 2002. Yeah, the guys are green. Yeah, the guys have some work to do. But the Ring of Honor 2002 roster blows away a lot of these other fucking rosters on their first days.
Oh, believe it or not, here's a fun fact. A lot of the people that you would see on those Ring of Honor shows, you saw in TNA. Spoiler alert, almost none of them stayed.
No, no. So that is going to do it for this show. I've watched a lot of wrestling today because I've been working on my book. And, before this, I was watching. Today, I've watched Halloween Havoc 89. I watched Starrcade 89. And I was starting to watch Wrestle War 90 when we decided to start recording this show. The worst of those were still miles ahead of this.
I have an idea for a special podcast that I want to talk to you about off air.
Sounds good.
Because spoiler alert, there are shows that we won't be on for, i.e., Christmas and New Year's Day.
Oh,
TNA
God.
takes those off.
What are you going to do to me?
Oh, we're not watching anything. It's just I have an idea.
All right.
It will
Well,
be pre-taped.
really, we don't do these shows live?
No, but this will be pre-taped.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this week's show. Do you have anything you want to plug before we wrap things up here?
Uh, ladies and gentlemen, do yourself a favor. Don't watch this show. Take a Bobby. Like I do Perler beat art. I made Sparkman earlier today. You should see. Arya, you should see it. I posted it on Facebook.
I think anyone with a brain is not watching this show. So
Yep.
what does that say about us?
We like pain. Now, excuse me.
Sadomasochism.
I'm gonna do something less painful. I think I'm gonna get my legs waxed.
That you're going to say you're going to have a hypodermic needle stuck into your lip.
I don't do Botox.
I thought you were just going to try to be like Swerve Strickland.
I'm not that crazy.
Sounds
and
good.
besides, with hypodermic needles in this area, and Swerve knows about this area, he's from here. You don't want to stick those in your lip because those are usually filled with something else besides Novocaine.
Well, hopefully he did not get his hypodermic needle from Seattle. But that's going to do it for this week's show. Hope you all enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed our descent into madness. Thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you again in 7 days.
Maybe.